Today, probably the hardest part was the glue lams because the natural camber has, so it was pretty hard to get a square cut. So you might have to shim your glue lam on the rail of the miter saw. We also learned that it's not 106 and 3/4. You might have to shave off an eighth or a 16th to get your width from your 21-foot glue lam to your other 21-foot glue lam to be 114 even, which you need to help square it. That was what we learned framing the box, and with insulation and subfloor, it went pretty quick using a template. We learned that, and if you assign positions to your partners, that works really well. But other than that, that's all that I learned.
Just for anything you had to relearn in putting the box together or the subfloor.
Yeah, just leveling. Just remember to make sure your box is level and shim it up if you need to. You probably will. Yeah, and I guess just relearning how to work together and make an efficient team.
Question number 2: what do you wish you would have known before starting?
Definitely the thing about the glue lams. I wish, because
Yes.
it's a pain to move them and recut them and make getting them square. So I wish that we had the proper length beforehand.
I wish I knew that just because you use the same piece like of glue lam under all four doesn't mean that it's going to level. So I wish I knew that the floor wasn't level and that you're going to need shims.
Very cool. Question number 3 and 4: mistakes that you made, and what did you learn from those mistakes, you guys?
Probably one mistake was cutting our short pieces a little bit too big. So I wouldn't even mess around. Take your measurement and take off a 1/4 inch just to make sure that you're not going to hang over the edge, because it's going to be a pain trimming that off at the end. So it's better to be a little short with your subfloor than long and having to cut it off.
Yeah, and just make sure you've got your OSB going the right direction before you make your cuts, because if you mess it up, then you're not going to be able to use that piece. So.
Last question: any tips or tricks for your other students, your other colleagues to learn from to keep a good workflow?
Figure out just what works best for the both of you and talk about it. So you make sure you communicate what your partner's going to do, what you're going to be doing, and try to always be paying attention to what's going on so that you can be thinking one step ahead.
So, yeah, because I noticed that you guys were thinking one step ahead of each other, which kept the pace, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, anything else you guys would like to?
I'd just like to say that making a template really helped. Like, there's enough scrap trim that we wouldn't be able to use, and that probably cut down our insulation time in half. If you just have one person using a template cutting it and another person throwing it in, that was a huge time saver for us today.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good.
Okay, we're rolling. So, what are students going to need today as they put their box together?
Today, we're going to need a nail gun for the blocking for our plumbing. We're going to need an impact to screw in our subfloor. We're going to need a speed square to help line up our subfloor with the border of our glue lam. We're going to need a scrap piece of wood and a sledgehammer to help tap in our subfloor together. And we're going to need liquid nails and our large caulking gun to glue down our subfloor. We're going to need our 2 1/4 hole saw and our 1-inch spade bit for the holes through the subfloor for our plumbing. We're also going to need our PEX cutters. That's for plumbing as well. And when it comes to insulation, we're going to need a long piece of wood to step on to help cut it, or you can make a template like I did. You're going to need your utility knife to cut it and your hammer tacker or staple gun for the fabric. Oh, we need this. And you might need a grinder depending if your hangers hang over your alt-thread hole. And if they do, you can use it to cut them off. Right now we're trimming down our glue lamb beams to exactly 21 feet because they're coming in at about 21.7 for us.
Important to get them down to 21.
Yeah, exactly 21 feet because that's how you make sure your foundation is square. And without that being square, it'll throw everything off. And Jasper over there, he's marking the end of our 21 and using his framing square to ensure that it's a straight line, because even if the saw is marked on 0 degrees sometimes, you can see the degrees right here. If it says 0, it might not actually cut at 0. So he's adjusting it to make sure that it cuts straight with the line he drew with his framing square.
You have our camber side out, which is the rounded side. The rounded side is this way. The flat side is going to be up towards the wall. You're going to take your framing square, put it up against the flat side. If you're not square, you need to make a square line because you cannot trust your saw to cut square for you. So I'm going to mark a line right here, and then we're going to line it up so that the blade is cutting exactly along that line. And that's how we know we're going to be good on this side. Then we'll take our measurement for 21 off of this one for the next side. It's a little tricky to get it square, especially on the longer glue lambs because of the camber. At least on the ones that we have, it's coming out an eighth short. After we are measuring from our square side, it'll be 21 feet at the top and like an eighth short on the bottom. So basically we're just marking 21, cutting a square, or marking a square line, and positioning the board so that it's cutting straight.
So the issue we were having with our 21-foot glue lambs is the camber, which is the arch in the wood. And when we put it up next to this 2x4 to make a square cut, we'd notice that the wood would start to wiggle because of the natural arch it has. And after 21 feet, the difference would be so much that we actually had to take a few spare pieces of shiplap and we'd build out our guard in order to make sure that this blade was making a straight cut. An easy way you can find if your camber will affect your cut is if one end is square and you measure 21 feet with the tape measure all the way on the bottom and on the top, and then if you take your framing square and you hold it up against the wood, you'll be able to see if there's a difference in your two markings at 21. And that's how we were able to tell that it was this rock that was the problem, not the saw itself. But you do need to make sure that your saw is set at 0. And an easy way to do that is pressing down on this lever and pushing it until it just clicks. And it'll stay there.
And there's a 0.
Basically, you need to definitely make sure that you get your one end square before you cut your length so that you don't end up too short. Because we do have a little bit of room, but you definitely need to make sure that you have this square and then double check your measurements like 2 or 3 times before you cut the length. You just have to make sure you get one side square and then go off of that for your length.
Right now we're done prepping our glue lambs. We're almost done, but we need to drill our holes at 2.5 feet for the all thread. So to mark where our holes are going to be drilled, we're going to take our tape measure and we're going to come 30 inches in and 1 3/4 inches down, which is exactly halfway through this glue lamb, which is 3.5 inches. And we're just going to make a little X at 30 and 1 3/4. And we're going to go in from both sides. We're going to replicate this mark on the opposite side. So when we start drilling, we'll go in halfway and then finish the hole coming this way. And that'll stop the bit from binding and getting stuck, because we had that happen and it's a pain getting it out.
It also helps you go in straight. So if you're a little bit off from this side and you keep going, you could end up really far that way. So if you come in this way halfway and then this way halfway, it's more likely to be straight. We're going to use our square and our level to make sure it's going in straight. And then we're going to take a piece of all thread and test it.
Are we through?
I think so.
So when you're having this problem, it's because your holes don't line up perfectly. So when you go in, you're gonna kind of wiggle the bit a little bit, and it'll add some more width to that hole. So you need it to hang over just a little bit. So when you put your bi-wall glue lam on, it sits flush and level at that corner.
The two pieces of wood.
Yeah.
It's okay that this part is popping out just a little bit.
Yes. As long as the wood's level. So in order to make a notch for this bracket like we have here, the way we get it to fit perfectly like this is we come over here, we're going to throw our bracket on just like that. We're going to take our pencil, mark a line here, and now we know how far in we have to cut for it. And for the depth, we're going to take the bottom parts of our bracket, pinch them together a little bit, push it up till it's flush.
Ah, man.
Now I'm going to come up here.
Hold on, Isaiah. Explain that other part again, because that was
This
a really
part?
good visual. Yeah, no, for the bottom part, how do you do it?
So I'm going to pinch the two forks together, push it up till it's flush against the bottom of the glue lam. Now I'm going to take my pencil and mark a straight line from the inside of this bracket.
Yeah, so I'm just using my square to connect the mark on over here to here, so when I'm cutting with my saw, I can make sure I'm going straight.
So when you put these brackets on, the big thing to remember is a common mistake is people want to flush up the end of the bracket to the glue lam, but what you want to do is flush up this part of the bracket to the glue lam, because if you flush up the end, it's actually going to push your glue lam in a 1/16 of an inch. So when you go to square your build, it's going to be out of frame.
So we want to have this part flush right here.
Yes, this part. And this part's going to stick past a little bit, and that's okay. So to make sure you have your bracket on how it wiggles a little bit, you want to make sure that your butt wall glue lam fits perfectly and slides in. And the way we're going to do that is take a scrap of glue lam that you cut off when you prepped them, and you're going to take it and slide it in this bracket, and then you're going to pinch it and move it as you need. And then at the very bottom of it, you're going to throw your nails in.
Yeah, we're gonna make our box on the ground, and then put the rest of our hangers up. Gravity helps put the hangers in a little easier, so that's what we're gonna do next. Next, we are gonna put the glue lams in for the butt walls, and then we're gonna square and level. I'm just marking the holes where the holes are gonna be for the lag bolts, so we can do the countersink. It's gonna be 1 3/4 in on both of them. 3 3/4 from the top and 2 3/4 from the bottom. That's where the lag bolts go.
So what I'm going to do is just tap this glue lam towards this one to close this gap a little bit, so our lag bolt doesn't have to work as hard to pinch it together. Because from this point to the opposite end, we need that to measure 1/14 exactly. So that's why I'm tapping this in to close that distance. Both ends will look like that when we bolt them in. So if you come on this side, you can see that Jasper's working ahead of me, and he's marking 1 3/4 inches in, right, and 3 3/4 down, and 2 1/4 up, and that's where our lag bolts are going to go to suck the whole frame together. So right now I'm pre-drilling a hole for our lag bolt up to this tape mark on this bit.
Why that tape mark?
Because that's a little bit shorter than the length of our lag bolt. First we're going to lag bolt it in, and once it's solid, then we can hit each side with the sledgehammer and square it as we need without it affecting the other side. Probably a 16th there. Want to see if we can suck it in?
You shouldn't run them in and out, because then you lose the strength of running it in. I would pull it back out and shave us like a 16th off, or maybe. So we go back there. Let me see it again.
Isaiah, go ahead and do that mark and
I would shave
That's what we did.
shave a 16th off, and then you should be able to suck that in because you still have a little bit of play.
Yeah.
And I would make sure your nail heads are flat.
Okay, now if we're not square yet, is that could affect it or no?
Not exactly. Now, if you're going from angle to angle, then yeah, that would affect you. But you're only measuring the width.
So we're gonna shave off the 16.
Yep.
Now we're gonna have a problem shaving it square.
Well, you still got to square it up.
I know, but we were having a problem shaving all of these, or cutting them and keeping it like a square cut. So right now I'm using my 1.5 inch spade bit to drill a countersink hole through the glue lambs. And we're gonna stop at this blue mark because that's 1/2 inch and that's the depth of our bolt head.
All right, so we're gonna walk through the layout for our floor joists on our bedroom bathroom unit, and there's some special things going on, so we have some special measurements. So we're gonna start our layout at 12 inches from the inside of our glue lamb right here, Edgar. And the reason for that is our shower pan is going here, and right here we have marked the center of our shower pan, so we do not want a floor joist going anywhere in here. So that's why we're gonna start from 12 inches from the inside of the glue lamb and pull our 19 3/16 from there, which we will miss our toilet as well. Our toilet's going here.
So when you put your hangers in for your eye joist, in order to keep this part flush with the glue lamb, it's important that the corner of your hanger is flush. It can't be too far in or too far out because that'll affect the level of your eye joist when you run them across. So, and the distance from this side of the bracket to this side needs to be 2.5 inches because that's slightly bigger than your eye joist to give it room to expand and contract for the weather. But you can't have too little or too big. So 2.5 inches is what we're supposed to do from metal to metal. And you can do that, Edgar. You can see right here is when you mark your layout, you'll have one side drawn. And if you come back and you just hold your square and you measure 2.5, just draw another square line. Now you know where to suck it up versus trying to do it after you already have one side nailed on. You have a line to throw it up next to, and then you can put a nail in and you know that's how it's supposed to be. And another big mistake that the inspector was seeing is some people were throwing nails in here and in this triangle. This triangle doesn't matter at all. It's just the circles. So we need 2 nails here and 1 here. There's nothing down here. So one thing to take note of is on this bracket, there's 3 little holes for nails. And wait to put those nails on until you fully lag bolt it together and suck it in and it's square. Because if you throw these nails in before you suck it in with the lag bolts, the nail's actually gonna bend and it might stop the bolt from being able to suck it together all the way. So once it's square and the bolts are fully in, then you can go ahead and throw these nails in.
Like bolts first? And
Yeah, bolts, then nails. And wait to put these hangers on until you have these 3 screw nails in, because it's just easier. You can't really fit a hammer back here, especially on that side. When you start putting your hangers in, a problem we ran into on one of the sides is this, and obviously your alt thread won't be able to fit in. So we're just gonna take a grinder and cut it off, but I move over this way because your sparks are gonna get thrown that way. And you're just gonna take it and cut it off. And now you have a clean hole to fit your alt thread in. So when we start our layout, we're at 1 foot away from the glue lamp. So at 1 foot, what we did is we put a nail and we hooked this notch in our tape measure to the end of the nail. But Dan said it's better if you take your chisel and you chisel a little notch so that your tape measure will fit flush on that line. And that would have really helped us. So that's a good tip to use. So one problem we found with these eye joists is mathematically they should measure 107 inches, but what we're finding out is you need to shave a 1/4 inch off for a little wiggle room, because that extra quarter, it's sitting right here on the lip, and when you force it in, your the width of your home goes from 114 to 114 and an eighth, and we need it perfect at 114. Also, when you hit these in, if you're hovering a little bit, it's probably because your hanger's not flush, so go ahead and tap it in, and it'll sink flush with the top of your hanger.
We're putting this, I forget what this stuff's called, but we're putting this in so that we can lay the insulation on top of it.
So me and Jasper have a pretty quick system to install this fabric that's going to hold up our insulation. So, well, I staple one row in, he starts unraveling the roll, and then I'll take this piece of fabric, slide it down level with the bottom of the eye joist, throw 3 or 4 staples in, and then he stretches it tight, cuts it with his utility knife. And once it's cut, then I can put these corners in, making sure there's enough fabric to roll up the sides a little bit. And he takes his hammer tacker, pulls it taut, tacks it in, and once it's tacked in, he starts unraveling the next roll as I staple this one. Shoot. Well, Nelson, there's a bunch of little pieces in here that just fell out. So we finished stapling in all of our fabric, and we just started insulation. So we found that it works best is instead of working separately, you have one person cutting the insulation, and they just keep on cutting and throwing it to you, and you have another person who's able to put them in. And to make an easy cut every time, instead of having to measure, what I did is I went ahead and I made a template that measures 18 inches. So those 2 little short pieces on the end are 18 inches. And that gives something Jasper to step on and make a straight cut, knowing that every time it'll fit in here without having to measure every cut he makes.
How's that template working for Jasper?
I think it's working pretty good. These pieces are fitting right in. You don't want them too tight, but you don't want them too loose. So just like that. And that's perfect. That's what we need.
Jasper's over here cutting and you're fitting and
Yep, that's how it has to be if we're gonna keep our graduation the same.
How much of a difference is that making your guys' workflow?
It makes a huge difference, and we also trust each other. Like, I know Jasper's gonna make a good cut, and he'll know that I'll put it in, and you just need to be able to get along with your partner, even if you're different. I'm not calling Jasper different. He does have ice on his teeth, though.
Yeah, so we got a template here that Isaiah made. It's pretty handy. All I got to do is put it on here. Then you got something to step on. So you can cut it. Works pretty good.
So before we put our subfloor on, we need to mark out and put some plumbing in. So Dan told me that this can be done before or after you put your insulation in, but if you already put it in, just take this chunk out. And so for this, you're going to need one 2-foot 2x6, and then you're also going to need a notched out 2x4 with this end at 2 feet. And so what we need this 2x4 to do is be flush with this eye joist so it won't disrupt the subfloor underneath. In order to do that, you need to cut out a piece of 2x4 or 2x6 and make blocking so you have something to nail into. And the space from the top of this 2x4 to the top of this 2x6 is 1.5 inches. So it'll fit perfectly flush. And these holes, usually hot is going to be on the left and cold is going to be on the right. But they need to switch it so the cold can run straight to the shower and to the toilet. So this is going to be a 1-inch hole, 6 inches in. and 1 1/4 down to the center. And this is a 1-inch hole, 10 inches in and 1 1/4 down to the center of that hole. And for this hole, this is our ABS. This is a vent through roof, right? Yep. So this is a vent through roof for our sink and toilet. And this is going to be 16.5 inches to the center and 2 3/4 inches to the center. And we used our 2 1/4 inch hole saw for that. So after you have this cut out and marked out, then you can go ahead and throw some nails in here and the back of this 2x4. So just like we did for the second build, we need to put a piece of 3/4 inch OBS to give us some space for our PEX and for our vent through roof for our dryer and our washer and dryer unit. And that's going to be a piece that is 6 inches down and 30 inches wide, starting 40 inches from the outside of this glue lamb. So that'll run all the way to 70, and it'll be 6 inches down, flush with this or a little bit down. I chose a little bit down just so it won't interfere with the subfloor when it swells. So that's it. And then we have our markings for our cold and our hot, and those are going to be 46 inches in from the end of the glue lamp for cold and about 51 3/4 in for the hot. And we're waiting on the measurements for the vent through roof for our washer and dryer, but that's going to go somewhere here and they'll all be strapped to this plywood.
So we're running our hot and our cold. It starts over here. This is the butt wall that connects to the other house. We are pulling two chalk lines for our hot and our cold from our 2x6 over there to the glue lamb here, hot and cold. Then you just know, that's how you know where to drill your 1-inch hole through your floor joists for your PEX, your 3/4 PEX to go through. And then we have our 2x6 notched out. Over here, just cut 2 notches in here so that you can get your pipes up in here and clamp them down.
Right now they're setting their floor sheeting, so they're cut their first sheet to fit. We had to cut it back because our layout wouldn't allow a full sheet to go. Our next sheet is a full sheet. He's got his liquid nails, the subfloor adhesive on, and they're getting ready to set their next sheet of plywood. It's going really quick. Their next sheet will take a little time. They got a few holes to drill in it for their plumbing, and then that'll go pretty quick on the second row. Third row, they'll have a little bit more plumbing holes to cut on the third hole. Well, what we try to do is work as a team. As one's putting screws in, and they're putting screws in the center of each one of our floor joists to locate them so that when they go to screw off the sheet, they've got something to screw, aim their screws toward. So he did that while the other one put the glue on, and now they both are setting the sheet of plywood down. Yep. Yeah, we don't want anybody standing around, so they try to stay busy, one doing one thing and one doing another. All right, now get one in your corners and one in your centers all the way of the center of your joist. Yep, we can live with that gap right there. We want to keep it flush with the edge of the seam. Well, we want to make sure that the building stays true at 9'6" and 21 foot, so they constantly need to check, especially on our width. We know our ends are good. We've already checked those, but with the new joists in here and them working, I just want to make sure that it stays at 9'6". So we can actually
damaged.
And you're gonna.
The wrong side.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, cut this sheet here. Good. All right, now grab a couple 2x4s. That's right. Let's get a 2x4 on each one of them, and then see if you can get a 2x4 on the other side. I got the plywood. You know why we need that? Because now you can cut this sheet anywhere you want without it falling off anywhere.
Okay.
All right. Drop it straight down. You ready? So what I do, set that right where it goes. All right. And then we just drop it down. Ready?
Yep.
Grab it.
I thought you were gonna drop
Oh
it.
no, well I am to you.
Good.
There you go, guys. Again, get your first screw in right here, where these two, and then get this corner here. Do you remember what it was?
12.
12?
12 to the edge.
Right. So 12 plus an inch and a quarter. 13 and a quarter. And just do your 19 after that. So here, let me hold you at 19. And I'll do your layout.
Plus an
Every
inch and a
no,
quarter?
nope, right, that's the middle. That's your diamond. Go to your next one. Looking good so far. Something looks off here. Something looks off here. Well, we're going to check it out. Something just doesn't look straight here. Looks like it's running on an angle, doesn't it? That look better, doesn't it? Okay. All right.
So
Now I'll do your layout from there. I'll burn it. Now go.
With the plumbing, don't force your PEX because if it kinks, you're gonna have to replace that entire line. So just be really gentle with it, especially right there. But after your plumbing, when you start sheathing, what Dan changed it is to, we're not gonna screw every sheet down 100% until we finish a whole row. So what he wants is he wants to tack the corners down, one screw where every eye joist is, and one screw in the middle of those eye joists. And then when we go to snap our lines, before you start sheathing, make sure to mark where your eye joist hits on the side of this glue lamb so you can just measure and snap a line instead of having to measure and remap your layout. But other than that, it's pretty much the same stuff.
So we're in the middle of putting our subfloor together. We're basically working as a team, trying to stay one step ahead of each other. So the glue dries pretty fast. So once we put one down, we need to make sure we're screwing it off. One on each eye joist or on the edges, and then in the center of each eye joist also. And as Isaiah's making cuts, I'm trying to be ready for him to bring the piece over. So by the time he's done cutting, we've got the glue already down. So once we put that down, it's time to screw off and just kind of keeps going and going.
You guys also made some cuts here for the pipes, right?
Yep. So you just got to take your measurements for your holes and make sure you get your measurements correct so that you're putting your hole in the right place.
Yeah, and we're okay. We've got a little wider gap there, but we're going to be fine with that.
So they're doing pretty good. One thing that did kind of catch my attention is, see how the drain pipes are coming in at a little bit at an angle? You want to make sure that they're coming straight up and level. So they kind of kick out a little bit. That could be a little bit of resistance on the from the insulation underneath. We want to make sure that they're coming straight up. This one over here is a little tighter. It's going to be a little bit harder to adjust, and so we got to get that fixed pretty quick. I wouldn't worry too much about your plumbing or your PEX because it does have a natural curve. You just don't want it shooting off to the side. So these are pretty much coming straight up, so we're good with that. We do want to say that or tell you that when you're working on your platform, you want to keep double checking for plumb and level, because we don't want to, with you working on it, you're getting on top of it, you're banging on it, you're screwing down into it and stuff. It is going to move around on you. So you just want to keep an eye and make sure it's nice and level and straight.
Cool. And you talked about the screws. All the screws look good.
So this time around, they completely nailed it. Everything looks good. They got all their 6 inches. They're in their fields. It's nice and clean. No complaints this time.
So overall assessment and everything that you're looking for. And
It's looking beautiful. The joints are nice and tight. The screw placement is good. We just checked for square and plumb. We're right on the money. It's looking good.